What is going on, everyone? It is Kate here once again, and this is not a YouTube video. This is just some interesting historical facts on the Battle of Somme. Now, the Battle of Somme was indeed a terrible, terrible war, and yeah, it just didn't go very well. Actually, no, it wasn't a war, it was a battle. But anyway, it was indeed one of Britain's worst wars in all of their history. So this was massive for Britain at the time. And yeah, so pretty much the Battle of Somme, in a breakdown version, was between the British and Germans, and the British tried to take over the German lines, but it didn't end up succeeding because the Germans had such sophisticated trenches, and then it became another front. It became another battle for survival, and it was just tragic, and the British had no idea what was coming their way. But okay, let's go into some more further detail about this, and I don't know why this is glitching out. It's actually so weird. I don't even know. It's just weird, but anyway. I will quickly, go... Wait, are you gonna work? Okay. Maybe not. Okay, so... Virtual Birth, Battle of Somme, and by the way, thanks to Adam and Teresa, they did get the pictures and all that stuff, so thank you so much for that, and yeah, let's get started on this very historical battle. It's kind of like 100 years ago, but anyway. So pretty much, this war did come with a cost. So the British, from July the 1st to November the 1st, wanted to invade the German trenches, trying to take over and try and save France from being overrun and overtaken. Now, eventually the Germans did retreat, but it wasn't easy, and it wasn't a quick, decisive battle, which the British indeed did think that was going to happen, because what happened was the British, from July the 1st to July the 8th, sent out a barrage of artillery shells, which indeed was 1 million shells fired in a period of 7 days. 1 million shells shot in 7 days. Now that is pretty incredible if you do think about it, because, you know, it's just crazy. But, anyway, so then what happened was the British were really, really, you know, keen, like, okay, we might be able to win this one, like, we might actually be able to. But then, so they walked over and they were just going to kill the rest of the survivors, but then boom. The Germans were prepared, they were ready for battle, and they had machine guns all out, and they had all their guns ready, and then they just opened fire straight onto the British soldiers and ended up massacring them. You know, on the first day after the barrage, 57,000 troops died walking up to the German lines. 57,000 British soldiers perished that day. Pretty incredible, huh? Well, it gets worse. So, over 6 months, the British were pinned down against the Germans, and it was just trench warfare once again, but on a new front. This became the Battle of Somme, which is now indeed known as, of course, the worst day and the worst battle for Britain, as it was just that bad. It was just awful. It was muddy. Everyone was suffering from disease. Men were losing their shoes in the mud because, of course, the word Somme comes from the Somme River. And now the Somme River is also located probably a couple of miles or clicks away from the trenches, which meant everything was damp and really muddy. And also they had torrential rain, which did not help because now all their trenches were flooded. But the Germans were all ready for that, of course, because all their trenches were ready, and they pretty much succeeded all the way through World War I because of their trenches. Because the British... So the British they always wanted to go fast, they always wanted to win a battle fast, so what they did was they built trenches that weren't sophisticated, but this time, luckily to the British, they made trenches that were a little bit more deeper and had a little bit more armour in such, so like to protect them from any incoming shells from the German artillery. But overall, the Germans did end up having the better advantage because they had the supplies coming in, they had tanks, they had all of this stuff, and the poor British only had guns, and that was about it for probably about 5 months. Then what happened was the British called in their tanks, and then that's when it all started going south for the Germans. So the Germans started running out of supplies because the tanks were taking out all the supply routes and all that, and what happened was the the British started taking over. They started taking over all the trenches, and it started becoming a decisive win, really. But then loss after loss. The British kept losing troops left, right, and centre. It wasn't an easy win, and pretty much the only successful crew or squad on the first day of battle was an Irish squad that moved into the trench and lasted there for 3 days until they were all killed. Or I think some of them did manage to survive, but yes. Most of the British soldiers were not prepared for this, so of course this was a massacre. And okay, the Battle of Somme, also known as the Somme Offensive, was one of the largest battles of World War One. Fought between July the 1st and November the 1st, 1916, as I said before, near the Somme River in France. It was also one of the bloodiest military battles in history. One of the first days alone, the British lost or suffered more than 57,000 casualties, and by the end of the campaign, the Allies and Central Powers would lose more than 1.5 million men, which is insane. Think about it, 1.5 million men just dead in 6 months. That's pretty insane when you think about it, just in one battle. Like, that's not even the Western Front. We're not even talking about the Eastern Front. The two of the biggest fronts, we're not even including them. We're just including one battle, which would lose more than 1.5 million men. It's just crazy. Like, this was just an insane, ridiculous war between the British and stuff. But in the end, the British ended up taking over, as I said before, because of their tanks, and they started investing into some new technology, including planes and all of those things, so they could get more supplies in, and it just became a quick and decisive war from there, and they eventually overrun the Germans, and the Germans had to retreat. And then the Germans retreated to the Hindenburg Line, which was also it was more of a defensive strategy by the Germans, and then they were implanted there for another 2 years until the war came to a sudden stop by a treaty between Russia and Germany, and then everything stopped as Russia was having a civil war, and Germany just lost too many troops, and they just couldn't sustain the amount of loss they were taking, so they ended up crumbling. So this was one of probably the successful wars, but it was never really a good war, considering so many troops died and so many troops were wounded. So that means when they all got back home, they were just distraught, and it pretty much nearly destroyed Britain, as most of their men had literally suffered so many casualties or died. Now, in Britain itself, in this battle, they lost 420,000 troops. 420,000 troops they lost for the cause. Literally, 420,000, which is really insane. But then you got the Germans. The poor Germans lost 450,000 troops, 30 more thousand than the British. But you remember, they were fighting on a different front, and they were fighting up against all the Allies, and pretty much the other Central Powers couldn't help them, so the Germans were just trying to defend off the French and the British at the same time, so unfortunately they crumbled. And then the Australians lost 20,000 troops, which is a third of their army, which is really insane. And really, this battle was just insane. Like, it was just bloodshed, so many lives lost for the cause of the battle, and yeah, so pretty much that's all it. Like, it was just insane. But anyway, that's why the Battle of Somme is classified and is known as the worst war for Britain, and indeed one of the worst wars for Australia, because of course they lost so many troops, and this caused a lot of grief and all that. But if you did enjoy this, then definitely, give me feedback and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm Cade, and thank you so much for watching, and yes, see you guys next time. Bye.